It's good day, brew baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I take my first pass at the commander in front of us on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. That deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. So I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out those links in the description. I'd appreciate it. But today, we're kind of in a way starting our last full week of Final Fantasy content for Edge of Eternities. Just want to get some random commanders out of the way this week, finish up some other ones, and roll our way right in. And today, we're taking a look at Raphael, Fiendish Savior. A 5-mana Rakdos 4/4 Devil Noble with flying that gives all of their demons, devils, imps, and tieflings we control +1/+1 in lifelink. That should be a hint at what creatures we're going to play in the deck. In the beginning of each end step, if a creature card was put into our graveyard from anywhere this turn, we get to make a 1/1 devil with whenever this creature dies. It deals 1 damage to any target. Raphael's a very interesting commander because it groups in a couple of interesting types together. Obviously, demons have a lot of support. Demons got some new support in Final Fantasy and Arden. So, demons, of course, are a very well fleshed out tribe on their own. But we add in devils. Not as many cards, but we do have a couple of cards that can make devil tokens. Imps, there aren't too many magic. Same thing with tieflings. There are a couple popular tieflings that we're playing. But I think the goal here with Raphael is going to be just to get them all in, give them lifelink, and just have a good time. A lot of them are big. A lot of our demons are big beaters in the air that are just going to be even better with lifelink. We have some life loss synergies we can pay into. But truthfully, we're just going to try to ram that through the sky, and we can use these devil tokens to die and deal out damage to our opponents if they kill them. But I think our goal is just to get our demons in hasty, get them attacking, and have a good time. I want to say a quick thank you to the channel member. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all the videos just a teeny bit early for just $1 a month, consider checking that link out down below. Well, all right. There's a lot of demons we have access to in Magic's history. And in our budget, we can't play some of them, but we can still play a lot of really interesting demons. Archfiend of Depravity just got that reprint, beginning of each opponent's end step. That player chooses up to 2 creatures they control and sacks the rest. Going to hopefully help keep our opponents lean. Arden, of course, the new card from Final Fantasy. Demons we control have Menace, Lifelink, and Haste. A great ability. He is 8 mana, though, so we're not always going to be guaranteed to see Arden or get him down. But if we do, we get to, at the start of combat, exile a creature card from a graveyard and make a copy of it. It's a 5/5 demon. I think Arden's a really fun card, and I think it's going to really support us well. Same thing with Abyssal Harvester from Foundations. Here's a 3-mana demon that can exile a creature card from a graveyard and make a copy of it, except it's a nightmare as well. And then we can only have basically 1 nightmare at a time. But it's a very interesting card that can basically like copy our opponent's things and make them nightmares if we want to, or we can get our own demons back if we don't have any other way to do that. It's just a very interesting ability. And it's not the best body in the world, but I think it's an interesting ability to have in our disposal potentially. Balor's got a nice killer ability. Whenever it attacks or dies, choose 1 or more, and each of them has to target a different player. We can have an opponent draw 3 and then pitch 3 at random, have an opponent sacrifice a non-token artifact, or have Balor equal damage to target opponent, deal damage to target opponent equals the number of cards in their hand. Kind of a fun ability, hopefully going to happen every time it attacks, just hurting our opponents and causing some chaos. Same thing with Bloodthirster. Whenever it hits an opponent in combat, we get to untap it and take an additional combat, and it can attack a player it's already attacked this turn. So the hope is, with Raphael out, Bloodthirster can deal 7 damage to 3 different opponents, hopefully with being the sky, gain us some life back, and just cause some chaos at the table. One of the first Tieflings we're playing in Ultra Survivors has Myriads. Whenever it attacks an opponent, we're going to get a copy of it, attacking it to our other opponents. And as long as it's attacking, it gets +X/+O, where X is the number of lands defending player control. So really fun ability that's going to potentially allow the survivors to get even bigger, depending on who our opponent is. And Raphael's going to give it that +1/+1 in lifelink, making sure that it hits hard at the same time. Another Tiefling and Grim Hireling. Whenever we hit an opponent in combat, we're going to create 2 treasures. So 1 more creatures gets us 2 treasures. So max to 6 per combat. And we can sack treasures to remove opponent's creatures. I don't see us doing that too often, but it's important to note that you can if you want to. Hidetsuko can sack a creature to scry 2, or pay 3 and tap it to exile the top card of your library, and we can play it this turn. And when you exile a non-land card with it, it gets to deal damage equal to the exile card's mana value in any target. I think Hidetsuku is a very interesting card. Of course, if you remember in Neon Dynasty, this was the card that had all those fancy neon frames. But I think it's an interesting card. It may help us depending on what turn we're at. Maybe we can wait up and use that mana. And it actually does work really well with another Tiefling we'll talk about in a second. Karlach, probably one of the better Tieflings in our deck. Whenever we attack, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, we untap all attacking creatures. They get first strike until end of turn, then there's another combat. First strike is always great, especially when you're dealing with creatures both in the air and on the ground. Making sure that you deal your damage first are going to be a little bit better in combat, and then we will really have a guarantee of destroying anything our opponents block with. Lord of the Void's a big 7-mana 7/7 demon that says whenever it hits a player in combat, you exile the top 7 cards of that player's library and just put a creature you can put from among them on the battlefield under control. Of course, it's going to depend on who you're playing against, right? I think you're going to point Lord of the Void at probably the player you think has the best creatures in their deck, but a very interesting demon and going to be tough to deal with as a 7/7 in the air. If it's not Karlach, I think my pick for the best Tiefling in our deck is probably Prosper. Prosper's a great commander in its own right. And he's really going to help us out here. Beginning of our end step, we exile the top card of our library. Until the end of our next turn, we can play it. And whenever we play a card from exile, we make a treasure. 1/4 Prosper with Death Touch. Prosper, of course, in its own deck, a treasure engine, playing things from exile. Here, I think it's just a nice blocker, being a 2/5 with Raphael out. Hopefully picking us up some treasures over the course of a game. And then, of course, we get into how many Rakdos do you want to play? All of them are playable in our deck. All of them are great in their own right. I just decided to pick the couple that I think are the most relevant. Rakdos Lord of Riot says that creature spells we cast cost 1 less to cast for each 1 life our opponents have lost this turn. A pretty interesting ability. We can't cast Rakdos unless an opponent lost life this turn. But when he comes down, he's a 4-mana 6/6 flying trample who can really deal some damage to our opponents. And then Showstopper, when it comes in, flip a coin for each creature that isn't a demon, devil, or imp, and destroy each creature whose coin comes up tails. This is a tiny bit unfortunate because Tiefling isn't on that list. But I think it's something we're willing to take because we can't expect that our opponents are going to have any of those 3 types. So it's more or less going to be a net positive for us. And Rakdos again is another 6/6 flying trampler who's going to guarantee that damage through. Reaper from the Abyss says at the beginning of each end step, if a creature died this turn, destroy target non-demon creature. This is really important because if we find ways to sacrifice these devils, we can start destroying creatures with Reaper of the Abyss, which is kind of interesting. Sword of Discord's another fun one. When it comes in, you choose 2 players, and whenever you hit one of them, the other player loses that much life. Generally, what I would say is pick someone you're going to be able to easily hit in the air, and pick someone you may not be able to easily hit, and then just punch the person you can hit in the air for that big damage, hitting it in both of them. We can also make the 1/1 devil tokens. We have things like Ob Nixilis from Streets of New Capenna that can make the devil tokens force players to discard cards. If not, we gain some life. Ob's an interesting card, and I think it just fits the point of making the devils. Same thing with Zerzoth. Whenever an opponent draws their first card each turn, if it's not their turn, we create a devil. And whenever one or more devils we control attack one or more players, you and those players each draw a card, then pitch a card, basically making sure that we get more devils. And the devils are great because they deal out damage, and they're going to count for creatures dying for abilities. Burn Down the House is an interesting card. It can be a 5-mana board wipe, dealing 5 damage to each creature, but it can also just give you 3 red devil tokens. Truthfully, there's a couple sorceries that make devil tokens, but they're all kind of overcosted for what you get from them. Burn Down the House is 5 mana for 3. I think Devil's Playground's 4 mana for 3, or like 6 mana for 4. Like, there are red token spells that make it less than this. I kind of wish they were better costed, but that's something to remember in the back of our heads. We can play cards, since most of the things in our deck are demons. I think it's important to play into our demons. Things like Demonic Council, which can just go get any demon we want and put into our hand. But if we have 4 or more card types in our graveyard, we can just go get anything and put into our hand. This is the perfect example of a tutor that gets better as the game goes on. Patchwork comes in and we choose a type and buff all creatures of that type. I kind of like this because you can either go demon and really buff your demons up, or you could go something like devils and just buff all your 1/1 devils even more and make them more of a threat. Demonic Covenant says whenever one or more demons we control attack a player, we draw a card and lose a life. At the beginning of our end step, we get to make a demon with a demon token with flying and then mill 2 cards. If the 2 cards share all their card types, then we're milled, then we sack it, which is going to be very difficult, I hope. but it is possible. The hope is we get a couple demons off of this and get a couple more, big guys in the sky. Of course, when you talk about demons, you got to talk about Liliana's contract. When it comes in, you draw 4 and you lose 4 in the beginning of your upkeep. If you have 4 more demons with different names, you win the game. It's it's not the primary way we expect to win, but it is a way we can win depending on what the board state ends up. Hopefully, we're just going to beat down with some demons, but it is a good option. And then Dustmourne gave us a great piece in our deck in Unholy Annex and Ritual Chamber. So the Annex you've probably seen if you play a lot of Standard. Beginning of your end step, you draw a card, but if you get a demon, everybody loses 2 and you gain 2. Otherwise, we lose 2 life. And then on the chamber side, you get a big 6/6 demon. But we have plenty of demons. We're not worried about that. The extra card draw is very important, though, to make sure that we get access to more things and hit harder. We do want to try to sacrifice the devils too. Remember, because when they die, they deal damage. And there's ways we can do this. Altar of Bale is a little bit of a nombo in the sense that you exile the creature instead of just of sacrificing it. But you get to get a creature from your graveyard and bring it back. This is a huge deal because our demons are going to be pretty regularly taken out, right? We want to get them back. Seance board says at the beginning of each end step, if a creature died this turn, we get to put a counter on it. And we start to get mana per the number of soul counters on it, but we can only use it to cast instant sorcery, demons, or spirit spells. Again, we have lots of demons we want to cast, so this isn't going to be a problem. Hopefully we can rack up counters on Seance board. Skull Clamp can clamp the devils to draw us cards and still count for the devils dying. And I think that's important as well to see if we can see it. The other huge deal is just giving all of our things haste. Making sure they can hit right away and not have to wait is going to be really useful to us to push that damage, especially with Raphael out, gaining us the life back. Things like Herald of Slanesh giving all of our demons haste, the Fire Crystal just giving all of our creatures across the board haste, and having all of our red spells cost 1 less to cast. We have a couple other haste names in the deck, but one of the interesting ones is Zerial from AFR. So the +1 gives all of our creatures +1/+1 haste until end of turn. Whereas the Zero can make a devil, which is interesting. And then the -6 says we get an emblem with it at the end of the first combat phase of your turn, untap target creature. After this, there's an additional combat. So we can take an additional combat with a specific creature, which is kind of interesting. I think more often than not, Zero is going to be used for the +1, but the Zero is nice to get you a devil if you need. Well, I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my first shot at Raphael, and I think going into testing, I'd want to look at, do we want the devils more? Things like Devil's Playground there, right? 6 mana for 4 devils. Or do we want to lean more into the demons, right, and go more that route? If we want to pay off the aristocrats, the devil's dying, we could look into more aristocrats payoffs like Agent of the Iron Throne or Bastion of Remembrance to make sure that we're really punishing our opponents for our devils dying. But that's something we'd have to probably spin towards, as that's not what I built the deck to do. Same thing, we could look into damage sweeteners like City on Fire or Fire Emancipation to make all of our creatures hit harder. This is important because we do have ways in the deck to deal damage both in combat and out of combat. City on Fire is nice because you could convoke it. We can use those devils to help bring it out. I just couldn't find a slot for it. But we are playing things like Bloodletter of Aclazotz to, double up the amount of life our opponents would lose, which is kind of interesting. But let's do what we love to do on the channel the most and get into our playtests. Remember, the goal of playtests on our channel is not to find Magical Christmas Land. It's not just to show off all our best plays, but remember, it's to get in some gameplay scenarios, kind of see our opening hands, and kind of start to figure out our game plan. This one, we're keeping a 4-lander, which I kind of like. We have the Herald for the haste for our demons. Carter's a very interesting demon, goading all of our opponent's creatures when it comes in, and then Karlach there for the extra combat. So we're looking pretty good. 5 mana for Raphael. Really, all we need is 1 more mana. But I like the curve we're looking at. So there we go. We see the 5th mana in the swamp. Nothing to do right too much as we work our way up here. We're just going to work our up. We didn't see any mana rocks or anything like that. We can hold up this Bedevil if we want to. So the thought here is I've only got 4 mana. If no one has any creatures out, I don't really want to slam Carter, right? Because there's nothing to goad. I think I'd probably just pass around the table and hold up the Rollick or the Bedevil. Just to just to give our opponents some thought there. The other thing I realized is it does say that demons cost 2 less, but on Herald of Slash, remember that Raphael is not a demon, it's a devil, so we can't get it cheaper. I think I would just leave both of these up and see where it takes us. Now on 5, I'd get Raphael down and go ahead and just get, try to attack with Herald of Slanesh maybe. If it dies, we get the devil. Otherwise, we maybe can gain some life. Note this Balrog is going to cost a little bit less now because of Herald of Slanesh. So as we come to this turn, we got 5 mana. Remember, demons cost 2 less. So we have a choice. Do we go for something like Bloodthirster, which would cost 4 mana, but would come in with haste and we get a lot of damage off this turn? Or do we go a little bit safer and try to go for something like Carter if the board's pretty full, or something like Karlach to get 2 combats? Note that Raphael doesn't give itself lifelink, so it's not the best attacker. I kind of like the idea of Bloodthirster. Deadly Rollick's now up, right, and free. Remember, Bloodthirster's a 7/7 with lifelink, right? It can attack all 3 of our opponents this turn. Maybe we sneak Slanesh in for one of those combats, maybe not. It is what it is. I think the point is we're doling out damage this turn and we're holding up that Deadly Rollick. Now we see Lord of the Void come down for 5 mana if we want to, potentially going to get one of our opponent's creatures. We could get the Balrog in and get some damage in, or we go for something like Karlach. I think we're probably late enough in the game that Carter could make sense. Right, maybe goading all of our opponent's creatures and hold up enough mana for like Bedevil if we haven't used it, and then just do the same thing we did last turn. Carter can attack. We're welcome to attack with it, but I think this 7 damage a turn is something our opponents either have to deal with, or they're probably just going to die very quickly. It's a shame we haven't seen any more mana, but that is what it is. The Slanesh is really helping us out. The nice part with the Carter here, right, is everybody else is goaded. They have to attack each other, and hopefully that leads to everybody being fairly wide open for our turn to keep hitting hard. I would have loved to have enough mana for Arden, but I think it's just Lord of the Void and then, hit somebody with it. Again, Bloodthirster for more damage. And I think we're a good stop. We didn't really get to see Raphael's bottom ability, but this kind of has this demon game plan. We could have also done Karlach here. Had all these guys attack, and we could have gotten an extra attack out of Carter, but I almost feel like going Lord of the Void into Karlach, or going, Balrog into Karlach makes more sense than just slamming Karlach right now. We also could have done it last turn instead, probably as well, but I like the Lord get something from somebody. Bloodthirster still deals out the damage. And then, maybe you'll leave a couple blockers back just to see what you get yourself into. Let's run into playtest number 2 here. Keeping a 3-lander with Rakdos Sigint. So there's our 4th piece of mana. Burn down the house for the Devil token, Seance board, and Faithless Looting. So we do have some draw. We do have some interesting things. There's Mogus. Mogus may not be a demon or a devil, but I think he really fits the point of the deck, right? Trying to hurt our opponents in the process. We see Bojuka Bog. So there's our 5th piece of mana. The question is, what are we doing this turn? If I do this into Mogus, unless I draw an untapped land, I can't play Raphael next turn. If I do the Bojuka Bog, I only have 3 mana. I could go digging with the Faceless Looting just to see what we get. I think let's play Mogus. Let's just start to hurt our opponents just that little bit. Like I said, here we have to get the Bojuka Bog in. Only got 4 mana, so I can't get the Depravity down. But I think I'd probably just play the Seance board, and then I think I'll go for the Looting. So draw 2, pitch 2. I think I've got to give up a land here. Really like Feed the Swarm, but I think I'm going to keep the Burn Down the House. And then coming into turn 5 here, here's where we play the Raphael. We are 3 Devotion off of Mogus. Kick back to our turn. There's the Reanimate, can help get something back from the yard if we want to. 6 mana. Maybe the Seance board picked up a counter. Who knows? Otherwise, I think it's just the Archfiend. And again, we're one Devotion off of Mogus being a creature. And then maybe you attack with Raphael. But the point is, here we're setting up this, which is going to start negatively affecting our opponents. Now at 7 mana, I think it's just the Reaper. That turns Mogus into a creature. Get attacking, right? Maybe we end up having some creatures die to grow the Seance board. The hope is the Seance board can be growing, right? To especially with the Depravity out, right? Can be growing, getting us mana. Maybe we can sneak in a Burn Down the House or something like that. Otherwise, I think we're just in good spot. If somebody's creature dies because of blocking, Reaper the Abyss can get rid of something. Note that Reaper doesn't work very well with Depravity because Depravity is at the beginning of the end step, so is Reaper. So something would have to die during our opponent's main phases or combat in order for Reaper to work with Depravity, or for Reaper to work and, besides Depravity. But Mogus does a good job at that, forcing them to either sack a creature or take two. Maybe this can feed Reaper, right, to destroy some creatures. So we got some interesting combos there. If they kill any one thing in particular, we just bring it back with Reanimate, right? It'd be very difficult to deal with Mogus. They'd have to exile it, whereas either these, maybe somebody destroys it, we can just get it back with the Reanimate and just push our way in. Otherwise, I mean, Sower's a great choice. Pick somebody, swing out at them, and hurt the other person for some big damage. But let's do one more. Keeping a 3-lander here with Zerzoth. There's a way to get those devils. Note that he can trigger himself to start, which is good. Reaper, Balor, and then Abyssal Harvester. So we do need a couple mana to get ourselves up to Raphael, but I don't think that that's a big deal. We can work our way up there. The important part is that Zerzoth can start, its part of our game plan pretty quickly. So turn 4, we put on the Harvester. Zerzoth attacks. So it says whenever one or more devils we control attack one or more players, you and those players each draw a card. So we're going to draw, they're going to draw, which is going to cause us to make a devil. Then discard a card at random. So we have 6 cards here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm just going to roll a d6. Lose the mountain. And again, now we have another devil, right, that we can trigger Zerzoth's ability with. Back to our turn. I don't have enough mana to get the Jet Medallion and Raphael down because I really want to get Raphael to give these guys lifelink now. So now we're attacking 2 players. So we each are going to draw 2 more devils, and then again we'll go at random. T6 here. 6, we lose the Ridge. Now at least these guys are 2/2s, right, with lifelink. And now we're starting to really set up a board, making sure we can attack, right, everybody. 5 mana here. Really want to get the Carnarium down, right? Thinking maybe just Balor, because we can tap the red before we pick it up. And then same thing, attack everybody. Draw a card. The Reaper goes away, but that kind of stinks, but it is what it is, right? We hopefully have some ways to get it back. Making 3 more devils, right? So now we're really starting to see this devil train pick up. The ones that did attack have lifelink, right? And maybe Zerzoth goes away. But the point is, we're amassing this devil army that we could start using for our benefit, and maybe we could find a way to sacrifice them for our own benefit. And now as we come back to our turn, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana, we could go for the Balrog. We're just 1 mana off of that, but I'm thinking like Jet Medallion into Carter, go to all our opponent's creatures, take the same attacks with the devil. We'll say Balrog's 5 and Toxic Deluge is 6. Okay. But the point is, right, now they're all goaded, they can't attack us. We're just continue attacking. Balor attacks there in the air. And I think we're just in good shape. I mean, yeah, it's relying on our opponents not having a ton of removal for Zerzoth or having an adequate way to block it. And if they did, it kind of stinks, but we can always just wipe the board with Toxic Deluge and cause some life loss from the Devils dying, which is always kind of interesting. And I think there's just some interesting options therein. Well, I'd love to know, what do you think of Raphael down in the comment section below? A really interesting deck. I think some money can be added to the deck in finding some better demons. I try to sneak things like Valgavoth in there, but truthfully, there's other great demons we can add. A lot of more expensive demons we can add to make the deck better. Razaketh. There's better demons out there if we wanted to make the deck a little bit, better on the power scale, but it just comes with a price tag. But I'd love to know what you think of Raphael, and I will catch you on the next one.